Halloween means All Hallows Eve. It comes before All Saints' Day in the Christian calendar. In Ireland, we have a holiday called Samhain. Samhain falls on November 1st, the same as All Saints' Day. And the night before Samhain, Oíche Chathaoirne, was a time of celebrating the end of one season and the coming of the next. It's also a day when the veil between the living and the dead is thinnest, and the dead might return as ghosts. So you have to watch out for supernatural beings of all sorts on this particular night. I'm teaching a course called Magic and Mayhem, the Folklore of Gaelic Ireland. This is a course that I have taught here at Harvard since 2016. We think about fairy stories, hero tales, migratory legends, healing charms, the song tradition, you name it. Some of the customs that Irish people would have practiced, say 100 years ago, are somewhat similar to things that American people might do today for Halloween. For instance, just like we carve pumpkins today, they might carve horrible, awful faces into turnips. There is a absolutely horrific carved turnip preserved, I believe, in the National Museum of Ireland. Another practice for Oíche Chathaoirne is that young men and boys might dress up and go from house to house. When they get to each house, they'd often say a rhyme or two. The gist of the rhyme is that they are demanding provisions for their Oíche Chathaoirne party. It was something like a trick-or-treat before trick-or-treat. They might have Halloween parties or Oíche Chathaoirne parties. Because this is the end of harvest, you would be eating a lot of apples, nuts, berries, that sort of thing. But these also feature in some of the games that you might play at an Oíche Chathaoirne party. So people would get a lot of enjoyment out of, for instance, bobbing for apples. It's also a big time for divination. You would play divination games quite often, and one of the treats that you might have on Halloween is something called a barmbrack. And into this fruitcake, people might bake certain divination items. Another one that we sometimes do in class is you peel an apple. You're going to take that peel and you're going to throw it over your shoulder. The peel will usually settle into something that looks like a letter, and that letter will be the first letter of your future spouse's name. I think my favorite part about teaching this class is seeing how engaged students get, how surprised they are sometimes at some of the things they learn. For instance, learning that fairies in the Irish tradition are much like regular human beings, but a little bit off. This, of course, makes it a little bit easier to be tricked by fairies. On Halloween, the fairies are much more active, so there are some protective measures that you can take. You might leave some of the last of your harvest, or even just clean water outside the house, just to ensure that the fairies are not going to mess with you on this night when they are out and about. I think it's always beneficial to encounter another culture's traditions, to see in some ways how closely related some of your own practices might be, but in other ways how very different your own culture is. It's good to look through another lens and get a different perspective and see the world in a different way. That is what I hope that students get out of studying Oíche Chathaoirne traditions and Irish folklore in general.